Relax, have a ciggy. You're listening to the Powell Movement.
Welcome to another episode of the Powell Movement. I am your host, Mike Powell, and I will say that it's been a crazy couple days in my life, and I'm going to share what's been going on with you. It has to do with a hit and run with my car. On St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, we had a drunk driver. I'm going to assume he was drunk. He took a turn, went by my house, decided to smash into my car, did about $4,000 worth of damage, had all that damage fixed, got the car back about 2 weeks ago, was psyched, had it parked in front of the house. Sometimes I park it on the street, sometimes I park it in the driveway. The other night, it was parked on the street, and another hit and run happened. My car got destroyed, probably another $4,000 worth of damage, and the guy left his Land Rover bumper in the middle of the road. So I was able to come up and grab his bumper later on that evening after I found the car was destroyed. Called the cops. Cops came and were excited about the piece of evidence, and that's where my wife steps in. She then took pictures of the bumper that we found, put them up on the West Seattle blog, made sure it was on all the blogs around here that all the moms are on, and we had about 60 comments right away. People were definitely engaged within the community, and people are out there looking to find this Land Rover to help us avoid paying another deductible, which was awesome. And yesterday afternoon, we got a tip. One of the neighbors saw this Land Rover on the side of the road with damage to the car. They walked by our house, came knocking on the door, and let us know the address of where this vehicle was parked. We went, took some pictures, noticed that our paint was on their car. The piece of the bumper that we have is a piece of the bumper that is missing on their vehicle. The turn signal housing that was broken is the turn signal housing that we have at our house right now that they left on the street. So we knew we had a match and called the cops, and 5 hours later the cops arrived and told me that they have to give it to the state police, and the state police will send this person a letter. And I looked at the cop at 1:30 in the morning last night and said, so you mean nothing's ever going to happen from this? It was a waste of my time waiting here. And he advised us not to go to the house and take matters into our own hands. And we decided to not listen to him. My wife woke up this morning and planned on going to the gym, but gave me a call as she was outside of the suspect's house and told me she was going to go knock on the door. I wasn't too concerned, as it is the nicest neighborhood in West Seattle, so it shouldn't have been an issue. It was 8 in the morning, which is a little odd, and at first the people did not open their door. After about 5 minutes, they did come answer the door. They were sitting in the kitchen. The 17-year-old son was eating breakfast. The mother was covering for the son, saying that he was in an accident last August and he was saving up his money to pay for the damage, which happens to be the exact same damage that happened to my car. And we don't believe them one bit. So what we're going to do is get our insurance company involved. And obviously we're not going to absorb any expenses. So if it comes to testing paint, we're probably not going to go out of pocket and do that. But we are frustrated, and I felt like I would share it with you, as why not? I'll keep you posted on what happens. But 17-year-olds suck. But we are not here to talk about 17-year-olds. We did that last week with Tom Shar. This week, we're going to talk to Joe Ciaglia. And Joe is the owner of the California skate parks. He has been building and designing skate parks for 15 years. And we're going to talk to him about how he got into the skate world. And his story is an interesting one, as it's almost like a bad mob movie. He grew up in California, worked at a grocery store, met some dudes who were into horse racing, got into the horse racing racket, ended up doing amazing in the horse racket, but also created a couple businesses on the side that turned into skate park building. Eventually, some of his competitors in the skate park building space would allege that Joe was involved in a collusion scheme, which we will talk about on the show. And lo and behold, today, Joe runs a skate park business. He runs a landscaping business, and he owns about 50 horses. So it's a cool story. It's different than most we're going to hear on the Powell Movement. And before we get into it, I want to thank my sponsors. They are evo.com, diecutstickers.com, Sierra at Tahoe Resort, and Spy Optic. Now, let's talk to Joe Ciaglia. So Joe, I'm bringing you on the show, and you're, I would say, a different guest than a lot of people that we've had on. We've dealt with a lot of athletes within the action sports community, and we've worked with a lot of business professionals in the action sports community. And where I've dealt with a lot of marketing professionals and CEOs of action sports companies, you're actually a different type of business where you build skate parks and you create fun. I mean, it's kind of like you're creating theme parks for people that don't need roller coasters, they need transitions, and you are the man who creates the different skate parks, works with the athletes, and makes sure that the parks are what the kids want today. Would that be correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's something I've always enjoyed doing. I've been doing this for close to 20 years, and I've seen it start out with very small, simple parks, a lot of limitations. You can't go any higher or lower than 4 feet in depth. And we've kind of always been advocates to try to continue to push the envelope and expand skateboarding. And I've been very fortunate from living here in California and exposure with all the top athletes and opportunities that came our way. But, we've been the kind of people that want to really let the world know. And skateboarding's a great activity. Call it a sport. You can call it whatever you want. But people that are associated with it are amazing people. The athletes are great people when you get to know them. I think it's been fun to be able to actually help develop the sport and actually see the exposure it gets. And parents now realize that your kid's a skateboarder. He's a great kid. Sometimes it was like you're a skateboarder, you're a bad person. You're out skating the street doing property damage. But I mean, again, once you get to know these people in the industry, I wouldn't change it for anything. We're very, very fortunate to be from California and being able to expose to skateboarding.
But let's not paint a totally pretty picture of skateboarding. There's still some scumbags out there too, and those are the people I like to associate with. You still have a good mix of everything, but back 20 years ago when you started, if you told your parents that you were going to become a professional skateboarder, they'd expect you to have a pack of cigarettes in hand and a bunch of scumbag friends. And in 20, 25 years, it has come a long, long way to where you can be that clean-cut kid who normally would have been a team sports guy, but you found skateboarding and that is your career track now. And it's totally changed from when I was a kid, and you too, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. But, those personalities are what creates skateboarding. So I agree. It's definitely being more acceptable to be clean-cut and responsible. But at the same time, everybody's an individual, and you should never change your personality just for skateboarding. But I think, again, some guys are to an extreme, but I mean, there's great guys out there you love, just like a guy like Evan Smith. He's just such a personality and a great skateboarder, and those kind of guys you need around the sport.
Yep, you need all kinds of folks around the sport, and I think the good, the bad, and the ugly, everybody helps make skateboarding as great as it is, and if you're missing some of those crews, you're really not being representative of the true skate scene. And in terms of your skateboarding, do you skate your parks as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was never a professional skateboarder, and I'm a transitional type guy. I'm not great at street, but I still roll around. I got a little park in my backyard and get in there and get myself hurt at least once a month.
Fair enough. And yeah, no one expects you to be a professional skateboarder because from what I found, you need business professionals and you need professional athletes. And a lot of times they aren't the same person. So having you as the business professional, making sure that the parks are built to code, to spec, and, working with insurance companies to make sure that everything's built correctly is not something the professional athlete's going to do. They can worry about their heel flips and things that you never have to worry about doing. You just have to drop in a transition.
That's one thing I think that actually kind of sets us apart a little bit too, is that we skate as a company. We have a lot of great skateboarders, but we actually listen to the athletes and the communities and build what they want. And a lot of guys that skate a certain style or a certain way, they want to build the parks the way they want them for themselves. We've kept a very open mind, and I think that's what's good at becoming a good listener and providing the professional at his training facility exactly what he wants, and understanding what the communities want and understanding what the events are trying to achieve, that we actually provide that service to give them exactly what they want for the best results.
Yeah, I would think if you're building something for a contest, you want a gnarly feature that judges and the fans are really going to like, and it's going to translate to great TV. But if you're building a local skate park, you don't need that gnarly feature. You want kids to be able to learn, have fun, and want to stick with skateboarding.
Correct. Yep, absolutely.
Your story, it's interweaved with a lot of different things. And I think finding out where you were born and raised and a little bit about your childhood will help me paint the picture of who you are.
I basically grew up in San Gabriel and then moved to Upland, California. And I actually was a gymnast in high school, and where I kind of started as a gymnast. But when I moved out to Upland is when I started my own company. And I started a landscape company here in Upland and started building residential swimming pools and landscaping. And obviously opportunities came up for skate parks. And one of the first parks was Laverne, California. And I was doing some construction for them, and they asked me to build the first skate park there. And at that time, there was rules that would only allow you to go 4 feet up or 4 feet down on the ground. And everything was a fenced-in environment and gray. And architects were basically designing skate parks. So I kind of really pushed in the skate park world to get skateboarders involved with designing. And a relationship I had was for the city of Fontana after I'd done about 4 or 5 projects here locally. And in Fontana, I convinced them to do a design build. And that was the first time in California that we pushed to have a bowl that was 8.5 foot deep and spread out the park and make it aesthetically pleasing. And with the landscape background, we were able to put in shade structures and landscape. And even though it was fenced, it was spread out way around the project, and it had soft landscape between it. And I think that just changed skateboarding in a way it was looked at as doing these design builds and really providing a good environment for skateboarding. So that was a changing moment, I feel like, in the skate parks. And then Pipeline was here in Upland, which is a block from my office. We were given the opportunity to actually rebuild the Pipeline Park, working with Salvo over here in Upland. It was a great experience, and I was fortunate to get the opportunity to build the full pipe here in Upland. So that was one of the first parks on the West Coast, which is another great experience. So again, being here in California was a good start, and kind of exposing opportunities that we should, again, have skateboarders involved with the design of parks and not just straight architects. And because we were a landscape architect and had skateboard experience, it was just a natural fit for us to get involved with designing and building skate parks.
Yeah, well, you stole a lot of my research there with the city of Laverne, California, and a bunch of things, and that is quite all right. But I'm going to take it back to when you were in high school. So you're a gymnast working on your floor routine and the pommel horse. And were you playing any team sports as well, or was it just gymnastics for you in high school?
No, actually, I was in sports too. I played football as well in high school. I played baseball, pretty much all sports. But high school, I started out football, and my gymnast career was actually a little bit better. The unfortunate thing is, as a senior, they canceled the program. And I went over to Pasadena City College, and I was a young kid. I graduated at 16 years old, and I went there and I tried to kind of compete, but I was still pretty immature for that type of a sport. I mean, the floor was okay, but you started getting your rings and high bar and things that take a lot more strength. I was still a kid, and you had a lot of guys that were in the 20s. So I gave that up and decided I wanted to start making money. I started working harder.
I hate to generalize, but I'm from the 30,000-foot view. You graduate at 16 and you're in gymnastics. Were you part of the cool crowd in high school, or what crowd were you running with?
I was kind of mixed. I mean, with the gymnastics side of it, they're a little bit different. You look back at the guys running around with tights and stuff, but at the same time, I was with the football crew, and I was definitely mixed. I was well liked, I think, collectively, and can kind of fit into any side of it. I mean, we had the upper parking lot guys that, there was the guys that smoked weed up there in the upper parking lot area. But I mean, I didn't hang out with those guys, but I can associate with them as well as the jocks and as well as the gymnasts. And I liked hanging out with the girls too. So I was one of these guys that kind of bounced around with all the crowds.
Yep. Well, we didn't get to know each other because I was up in that upper parking lot and you never came up there, and that's totally fine. But it was a good time. And what else is a good time is buying things from my sponsors, and we are going to talk about two of them right now. My first sponsor is evo.com, and if you're not familiar with Evo, it is the best shopping experience in store or online that there is: ski, snowboard, or just lifestyle sports. You can find them at evo.com, and at Evo, they offer free shipping on all orders over $50, no hassle returns, and a low price guarantee. They also have stores in Seattle, Denver, and Portland. And for listening to the Powell Movement, type in capital POWELL 10 when you check out on evo.com, and you're going to get 10% off your order just for listening to the Powell Movement. So thanks for Evo for making that offer possible. And my next sponsor is diecutstickers.com. And if you haven't worked with diecutstickers.com, then your sticker game is not on point. They've been around for 15 years. They do the majority of the sticker printing in action sports, and there is nothing even close to the quality that's together. For listening to the Powell Movement, Die Cut Stickers is going to give you 10% off your first order. When you request a quote from Die Cut Stickers, please put in the code DCS15, and you will get 10% off your first order at diecutstickers.com. Thanks to Evo and Die Cut. Now let's find out what Joe does after high school. So after high school, you go to something city college. I kind of miss that, and it's a city college, so we don't even need to say it. But while you're there, is that when you are working at Ralph's grocery store?
Yeah, at 16 years old, I got my first job at Ralph's. It was kind of nice. I started there as a box boy, worked my way into the night shift, and then I became a night crew manager, and I was called a person in charge. So I was a six-man. So I basically was a manager. So at 18 years old, I can't believe they trusted me, but I had the keys to the store and the combination of the safe. I would close out Ralph's. So it was a really good experience at a young age, and that's kind of what I did. From that, I actually started cleaning carpets and started my own carpet cleaning company called California Carpet Care, and that's where the Californian kind of started.
I only brought up Ralph's because it sounded like there was a racetrack right near it that you used to go to from work.
The San Diego racetrack. I really enjoyed racetracks, and I would work the night shift, and then daytime we'd watch racing. That's what I kind of got introduced into horse racing. And then about 17 years ago, I bought my first racehorse.
It sounds like your life revolves around horse racing and building skate parks. So you're 16 years old or you're 18 years old, you're manager of the store, and then you're going to the racetrack. Are you betting on horses, or you just love watching horses run?
Yeah, I mean, both. I mean, I would make my bets. At that time, there was a great horse called John Henry. I used to love to watch him, and there was a lot of excitement around just the racing. But I did like the betting aspect of it, obviously, too. So I used to sit in the eighth race and sit in the same spot, and that was my lucky spot. So, people get a little superstitious in the horse game, but that's what I used to do.
And you must be like the youngest guy in the horse game, I would think, because I don't know too many young people who go to the horse track, especially 18-year-olds. So are you the young guy and meeting some older people who are into the horse world? And is that how you get started there?
Yeah, actually, the way I ended up buying a horse is my wife was friends with a girl named Julian, and her dad was a trainer. So she was around horse racing, and the son, Peter, also became a trainer. So we used to see him at the holidays, and basically I'd hinted around about, I'd like to get a horse. So he had a guy that he was training for, and he introduced me to him, and an older guy took a liking to me and taught me the ropes and allowed me to be a partner. I mean, for me, I'm the kind of guy that if I get into something, I really try to learn and enjoy it at the same time. And so horse racing, I had a passion for. And it's a tough sport because I started out small and doing just claiming and stuff, and then started breeding and buying horses and kind of found my way to the top level, which I'm very lucky to be there. But had some great success this year in horse racing.
Yeah, I was reading about some of the stuff that you've done with horse racing, and it seems like you've built an empire. So we will talk about the skate parks and horse racing, but it's just kind of getting the whole story. It kind of all went together. It's, you started going to that racetrack. And before I get into California carpet care, have you heard of Enumclaw, Washington by any chance?
No, I have not.
I would hope that after this, you'll Google Enumclaw, Washington, and the word horses. I wouldn't do it now or on the phone because you won't want to speak with me anymore. But there was an interesting thing that happened years ago here that I think everybody should know about, and it is disgusting. But back to California carpet care. How do you transition from working at Ralph's to starting your own business?
Well, I actually started working for a company called A1 Carpet Care, and they were a carpet cleaning company, and they were the ones that advertised like $6.95 a room, and you would go out and you meet the person who wanted their house clean, and you would try to ask them to upsell. So I started getting bigger orders from these clients that I walk into because I was very honest with them. And from that, the A1 Carpet Care would give me the better clients, and I would go to Arcadia's and the Beverly Hills. And I started thinking to myself, why am I working for somebody else if I could do the same thing? So I decided to start my own company, and I started California Carpet Care, and it did pretty well for a while. And I did it for about a year and a half and decided to move to Upland and sold that company and
Bought a house and car, right?
bought a house in Upland. It was a brand new home. But I ended up getting in my house, and instead of having them do the carpet inside the house and flooring and the landscape, and I asked them for a credit for the interior and a credit for the front yard landscape, and they allowed me to do that. So I decided, okay, I'm going to do my interior, which I already knew how to do because I can install carpet. And I decided to landscape the front of my house. I thought I did a pretty good job. And from that, the neighbor asked me, can you do my house? And the next neighbor. And so then I decided, you know what, I'm going to start a company. And I started California Landscape. And I did 53 homes in that neighborhood. And that's kind of how I evolved my landscape company.
Yeah, and it sounds like you're doing landscape work. And when you go to the city of Laverne, you're doing landscape work for them. They're like, hey, we need you to put a bid on a skate park in too, because we like working with you and we like the quality that you put together. And we know you can build skate parks. And is that how skate park development starts for you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what happened. I was doing maintenance, mowing the grasses for the city of Laverne and doing construction projects like bus stops and stuff like that and hardscape. And they asked me to bid the skate park there. And that's how the first one happened. The city and the architect that had designed it, I believe that you had to do continuous concrete. It's kind of like a swimming pool. So we started at like 7 in the morning and finished at like 12 at night, but we poured the whole entire transitional areas in one shot. So it was a pretty interesting experience.
So from that park, do people come see what you built and then do skate park orders, or people come in looking for quotes from you? Does that just explode? Because I know in California, there was a period where skate parks just seemed to be popping up around every block. They were everywhere.
Yeah, the thing is, in the process of doing a skate park, when you have a public works project that has funding from the government, basically, or the state, they have to go to public bid. To win a skate park project, whether you have experience or not, you had to be the cheapest guy. So on that particular bid, I was the lowest qualified bidder. And the next sequence of parks that came up, you had to be the lowest guy. So here I'm a guy that does the highest level quality, I feel like, because I come from a residential background. We care about skateboarding. So we're spending our resources and not making any money to build these parks because we care about the quality of them. And this is a continuous cycle that we had to do. Eventually, cities started putting qualifications. You had to have experience. And that's why I lend towards a design build where the city has an option to hire a qualified skate park designer and a qualified skate park builder, look at their experience, look at what they can provide for them, look at their costs, and then have a collective, non-biased vote on who they want to hire. And that's the best way for skate parks to get built. But what happens, you saw a lot of skate parks that were not designed well because architects were designing them because they had the projects, and contractors that build roads and streets would build skate parks because there was no disciplines in place. And that's why there was a lot of bad parks. I mean, you don't see it as much now. It still happens, and it's unfortunate. But our thing was always to try to get every job we could as cheap as we could because we cared about skate parks being built right. And that's kind of what helped our success is carrying and doing quality work, and then having the opportunity to do the design and the build, which actually improved the skateability, and the quality was obviously always there.
Being in California, having California in your name, and having experience in building skate parks, or at least after that first or second park, because at that point, were you skating, or did skating for you start when you started building parks?
I skated a lot more after. I mean, I didn't skate as much when there was no parks, but as the park started getting going is when I started really skating a lot more, absolutely. Especially like some of the good parks around, like Fontana was a great park. I mean, that was the style of park that I liked to skate. It had a lot of transitional blends and a lot of flow, and that's the type of park I like.
Okay, well now it's time to hear another word from our sponsors. And Spy Optics has the best lens out there. It's called the Happy Lens. And what it does, it filters out the bad UV lights. It lets the good UV lights into your iris. And that puts you in a better mood and makes you more alert. It's science, it works. And you should be happy because Spy is going to give you 25% off any purchase on spyoptic.com. To get that special offer, type in capital SPY lowercase podcast number 25 at checkout, and you'll get 25% off your purchase, $450 or less, and that's from the good folks at Spy Optics. And if you're headed to the Lake Tahoe area, Sierra at Tahoe is the place to go. If you want to get away from crazy resorts with water parks, bros, and way too much development, and you're heading to Lake Tahoe, there are plenty of reasons to visit Sierra at Tahoe, and a Starbucks on every corner is not one of them. Sierra at Tahoe is known for having snow that is organic, locally sourced, and GMO-free. Check out Sierra at Tahoe. Great resort, great people, and a lot of fun. Thanks for supporting the Powell Movement. Now back to Joe and business. And are you still doing residential landscaping and looking at a parent company as California Global? Do you have a few different brands underneath that umbrella?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically I started as California Landscape, and then I expanded into California Skate Parks. And then we formed a company called California Ramp Works. And what that was, skate parks was a design build company designing and building skate parks, as well as California Landscape designing and building residential. And so on the ramp side of it, we started developing the mega ramp. So one of my partners, John Tyson and Brian Harper, basically were involved with the process of actually developing the mega ramp, and they did the Great Wall of China for Danny Way. So we were involved with doing the mega ramp at X Games. And so we started the company California Ramp Works, and we developed also a mini mega ramp because we had the big version and we wanted to introduce skateboarding to people in the progressions. Here in Upland, actually, we built the first mini mega ramp and developed it here, and all the skaters used to come over and test it out. And that's kind of how the Ramp Works company started, because we did wood and developed the wood. And so we kind of made that the action sports company. And then California Skate Parks was the concrete designing and building of skate parks. And the landscape company also did high-end construction. And what was kind of unique for us is the Maloof Money Cups, they want to do an event in Costa Mesa in the fairgrounds. So they came to us. And what we told them is, if you want to do a competition type skate park, we wanted it to be concrete, because everything we saw for the pros was wood. And we felt these guys are the best in the world and they deserve to be on concrete.
Mm-hmm.
And nobody really believed that we can do this in a short period of time. And in 5 days, we took that arena there in the fairgrounds and brought in and built an amazing concrete skate park. That was an opportunity for us to bring all our talents together. So we had the landscape background that we brought in stamped concrete, cultured stone, granite. We did a backdrop like a Wells Fargo building and created a whole environment. We put grass in. We also developed the mini mag ramp for the first time and introduced that into the vert ramp. So it was an opportunity for all of the brands and all the companies that I'm associated with to come together and put all the talent in one place. And I thought that was a great opportunity to expose skateboarding to the world. What was unique about that, you had street skaters and transitional skaters watching each other because the event was actually together at the same time. There was a great camaraderie in the skate world. And that's kind of how I also ended up meeting Rob Dyrdek. He didn't believe that we can do this. And we proved everybody wrong that we can build a skate park close to perfect as possible in a very short period of time and cost effective. So that was a great moment, I thought, in skateboarding.
Okay. So you're responsible for everything that was built on the Fantasy Factory and some of the features and that big ass skateboard, I think is a Guinness Book record skateboard. Who comes up with those concepts? Are you involved in the concepting of them, or are you just told, hey, we want to do this, and you're the man of action to make it happen?
So basically, the way I met Rob was at the first Maloof Money Cup, and he didn't believe that I could do this concrete course in that period of time. And he was so blown away that I was able to do what I did. He says, hey, Joe, basically, I'm going to do this new thing. It's called the Fantasy Factory. I'd like to have you come over to this warehouse and tell me if you can build this thing. So he showed me like this little picture of his idea. This is an empty warehouse. And he says, hey, I'd like to have you build this. You think you can do this in 2 weeks? I'm like, sure, I can build that in 2 weeks. And so that's kind of how he hit it off. He says, Joe, one day this warehouse is going to be iconic in LA and people are going to come around and it's going to be like a museum piece. And I thought, okay, Rob, whatever you say is great. I really didn't know much about Rob. And so we went in and started building the facility for him. And he says, hey, you know what? I want to go ahead and add a skate park in there too. You think you can throw that in and get that done in a week? And I said, sure. So basically I built the whole Fantasy Factory from a picture. That's kind of how I got the reputation that I can basically build anything in a fast period of time. So every time the show needed something built, they would come to me and say, hey, Joe, can you build a set? Can you build this apparatus, whatever it was for the show? And then the great one, they came up and said, hey, can you build the world's largest skateboard? And I'm like, absolutely, but I want to do it right. And that's when I built the world's largest skateboard, which is basically 12.5 scale. And I duplicated Rob's board. So that's kind of how that transition and how the introduction came along.
And would that skateboard be the craziest thing you've ever built for Rob, or what would be?
No, the skateboard was obviously the crazy. I mean, besides building some of these street league courses, but the skateboard was absolutely something that was great experience. I mean, to get the freedom to do something like that and to build to scale and actually have a co-world record with Rob Dyrdek and some of the great stunts and that we've done. And obviously, the disaster of me skateboarding the skateboard in Pennsylvania and having to jump off. It's kind of funny. You build all these great skate parks and nobody knows who you are, and you go crash a skateboard and everybody knows who you are.
Yeah, it's funny how media works that way.
Exactly.
So one thing I have to talk about in the building of skate parks, but it sounds like there were some issues with some other park builders, and they brought up a complaint to the city, and well, I don't think there's any charges or any lawsuits. There was a legal issue, and I don't know if you were able to talk about it, but want to hear your side of that story.
The thing is, Rob Dyrdek's a great guy, and we started doing the street league competitions, and he also formed a foundation called Rob Dyrdek Foundation. And what we would do is we would build these skate parks for competition, and we would take a lot of the features and donate them to the cities and build skate parks. And then through Rob's shows, people like 7-Eleven and Carl's Jr. would want to hire Rob as a sponsor for their product, and Rob would say, look, give money to my foundation, and we'll do something around that. So in LA, we ended up building, I think, 10 or 11 parks that were fully funded by private donations. And we got a lot of exposure. And Rob Dyrdek did a lot of great things because we're trying to give back to the communities and put street league features in that came from parks and try to do a good thing. And I think that what happens when you kind of have success and you get a lot of exposure, people want to take pokes at you. And one of my competitors that took a poke at me. And I think, again, with Rob Dyrdek and the exposure we had, I think it was just something that they tried to come at me at. And I mean, there was nothing that was done wrong, but that's what happens when sometimes you have success. It's kind of sad is trying to do the right thing and help out communities, and it kind of just puts a damper in everything.
Gotcha. I can imagine that creates a lot of headaches that you don't need, but you get through them.
Yeah, exactly. But like you say, skateboarding is a great thing, and we're the kind of guys that want to help out and get parks built and give back.
Skateboarding should be about keeping the law out of it as much as possible, in my opinion, because I think that's part of the roots of skateboarding is not respecting authority, even though it's changed a bit, but there is still some of that. Anyway, as we move forward in this, a big part of your life that we really haven't talked about yet is your horse racing, and you do own a horse together with Rob, but when you were younger, you were going to the track in Santa Anita racetrack, and you were checking out things there. You met a lot of people, and your wife introduced you to a trainer. I think it was Peter Urton. And then he introduced you to Frank Elijah, and within 6 months, you buy a horse with Frank?
Yeah, absolutely. In 6 months, I bought my first horse with Frank, and then another guy, which his name is Mike Mellon, Brand Jam Stables. And our partnership was together for a long time, and we had some great experience. We used to have claiming horses, had some great success, had a lot of fun in horse racing. And unfortunately, my partner, Frank, had passed away about 6 years ago. And at that time, his wife, Sharon, she was okay with staying into the business. And so I took over and we started buying horses at sales. And one of the horses I bought was called Wee Miss Frankie, which was named after Frank because he had passed away. that's the horse I brought. Well, that's the second horse I brought Robin to, because the first horse was Mega Heat, which he actually rode on the show. Should we elaborate on that a little bit? Or?
Yeah, you were going to talk about him riding the horse. It was the scariest day of his life, I think.
I had two partners, Frank Alicia and Mike Mellon, and we raced for about 10 years and really enjoyed the sport. And this kind of was around the time that I started getting around with Rob, about 10 years after the partnership, and doing stuff at the Fantasy Factory with the skateboard. And I suggested that, Rob, maybe you should buy a horse with me, and maybe you can jockey the horse. And MTV loved it, and he loved the idea. He only went out about 4 times and practiced riding. We arranged an agreement with Hollywood Park to allow a quarter-mile race. So I went out and bought this horse, and the horse was called Mega Heat. And so we found a horse that looked just about like Mega Heat, and Rob jockeyed that same horse. And he actually was amazing. This is the nervous I've ever seen him. Out of all the stunts he did, flipping the car with a skateboard and all these crazy things he's done, getting on that horse that day, he was feeling sick. But it takes a lot of guts to jump in a starting gate and actually break out of the gate with a thoroughbred going 40 miles an hour. And he pulled it off and won the little race. And it was kind of cool. So from that point, I got Rob a little hooked into horse racing. And about a year after that, unfortunately, my partner, Frank Alicia, had passed away. So I continued to buy horses. I went to sale, and the horse that we bought was called We named after Frank. Weem is Frankie, which his wife used to call him Frankie, Frank Alicia. And we had some great success. That was the first time we actually had won a graded race. So Rob brought a little luck into the game, a lot of experience. I think Frank was looking down at us, and her first race was at Del Mar, and she won pretty easy. And then she went on to win 2 grade ones and third in the Breeders' Cup. So it was a great experience for Mrs. Alicia, because all of us were together with her for that whole year. Rob had a great time with it. Rob, being a little celebrity, brought some exposure to horse racing, which is a great thing for the sport. And it was a great healing experience for the family, because we're all together for that great experience.
Wow, well, that's a pretty cool story. And how many horses do you own today?
I am actually partners in about 60 horses. I have about 25 at the racetrack. I also breed horses as well. And so it's something that I was able to develop over the years and try to get some better horses and had some great success. I have a horse running this Saturday called Ashley Loves Sugar. It's a homebred that's a millionaire. He was just an inexpensive horse that we bred and went on to actually run in the Breeders' Cup this year as well. But it's pretty fun to actually raise a horse that actually earns over $1 million. And one of the great highlights of success that we had too, we had a horse called Dance with Fate that actually was in the Derby about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And this year we were very, very fortunate. We had a horse called Champagne Room, and she won the Breeders' Cup for 2-year-old fillies. And she went on to get the 2-year-old Eclipse Award of the year. So it was kind of nice. We went over to Florida. It was kind of like an Oscars. They actually have 3 finalists, and you sit in this formal room with tuxedos, and they open up the envelope, and they read your horse's name off, and you go up and give a speech. That was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, it sounds pretty awesome. And is there big money to be made in horse racing? So you have a horse that's made $1 million, but how much do you think you've put into that horse over its lifetime?
Oh, a horse like that you breed, you're putting in a lot less. I mean, that's something that we're very fortunate and lucky to have. Horse racing is hard to make money, but a horse like that, you're still paying trainers and jockeys. But a horse like that is probably made well over $700,000. So that works out. I mean, it's just the thing about horse racing, you need to have a passion and really like horse racing. I mean, if you're in horse racing to make money, it's not a place to go. You need to go in there with an understanding that, potentially you're going to lose a little bit, but have a lot of fun. And if you're lucky, you can actually end up making money. So for me, I've been very fortunate. It seems like over the last 5 years, I've had 1 or 2 good horses, and those 1 or 2 good horses pay for the other horses. But typically in the horse business, you're not in to make money, and you usually take the money that you earn and you put it back into new stock and have some fun with the next year's horses.
Gotcha. And did you grow up riding horses? I just don't understand where the connection came from other than the track.
I just always enjoyed watching thoroughbreds, the excitement of winning. The thing is, I'm a smaller guy that's very competitive in sports, and I was always kind of a little bit of an underdog. And I've always looked at myself in business the same way, a guy that's got a lot of guts and willing to try things and try to get to the top. And horse racing is the same thing. I love having a horse that is like a California homebred running against $1 million horses that are bought in Kentucky and being the underdog and somehow figuring out a way that your horse has the guts that you have to dig down deep and win races. And such a thrill to actually see your horse win, especially when you're looked at as an underdog. So that's the joy of it, and especially when you raise them and breed them. My kids now have grown up. They were very competitive in sports, and now that they're not in sports, I don't got any kids to cheer for, so now it's my horses.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And you can get more mad at your horses than your kids, I would think, but I don't know. I don't own horses.
It's usually the jockey. You don't usually blame the horse. You usually yell at the jockey.
Are the jockeys a hard partying type of crew? Do they like to have a good time?
There's definitely a mix of guys that actually do party. I mean, there's some of the guys that are pretty serious, and there's a lot of guys that do actually celebrate and party. So what's interesting about what jockeys is they're athletes, and most of the guys are great golfers. I don't know if you knew that, but most of these little son of a guns can hit the ball far. They're overall great athletes. That's why I think even Rob being a smaller guy and being a skateboarder, having good balance, I think he adapted really well because he's an athlete too at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. And I can see that carrying over. All right, so I'll part with one final question. The Olympics are coming in 2020 in Japan, and it's an interesting thing because in skateboarding, I'm sure there's half the skateboarders out there really think the Olympics is a big opportunity for skateboarding. And then I'm sure there's another part of skateboarding that says this is the death of the sport. Once you give our sport to those corporate hands, you never know what can happen. I've seen it happen with snowboarding. I've seen it happen with skiing. And who knows what's going to happen when skateboarding gets there. But to someone like yourself, who is in the skate park building business, are you positioning yourself to be able to build the course for the Olympics? Because it will be the biggest stage that skateboarding's ever been on. And I would think you want your brand there to help expose it to the global audience.
The thing about skateboarding and going to the Olympics is I feel pretty much like you. I think that it's good for certain people and other people it's not. So a lot of skateboarders are just quarter skateboarding. They skate because they love skateboarding, and they think it's not a great thing for the Olympics because it can be controlled. And some skaters want the opportunity to actually be at the highest level and show themselves off to the world. So the key to me is that I want to be involved in any aspect that I can. The one thing that's important to me that I'd like to fight for is that each skate park should be different. And I think a lot of these countries want to know what the skate park's going to look like for the Olympics. And you'd hate to see every single skate park built the same and every routine to be the same. So I think keeping the variety of type of terrain and features in skate parks and allowing everybody to skate as an individual and show their skills at the style that they like to skate is important. And I think that's the biggest concern is people feel like it's going to become more like gymnastics and can kind of control it. So I'm hoping that it can stay that way. And that's one thing I'm fighting for. If we're fortunate enough to be involved, it'd be great. I mean, we're obviously working with Street League, which is basically hosting the World Championship. And we're also working with Advanced Park Series, the World Championship. So we're doing our best to keep each park different and create variety. And we're hoping that that tone carries on to the Olympics. And I think it's going to be a great thing for the sport. The exposure is going to be great. And we're here to help in any way we can to ensure the quality and again, variety in skateboarding.
Well, I really love hearing variety and not having the same parks because I think that's the worst thing you could possibly ever do is have multiple parks that look and feel the same because that makes it not fun. It makes it cookie cutter. And the beauty of skateboarding is it's always been about creativity and not being about cookie cutter. Your parks, I've skated them. They're amazing. And I look forward to new renditions of what you're building in the future. And I want to thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time too.
So that was Joe Ciaglia, and he's got a great story. I mean, it starts bagging groceries, and from bagging groceries to the horse track to meeting Rob Dyrdek and all the different things Joe has done in the skate world. It's a pretty cool journey he's been on, and he's made a fortune doing it. He sounds like he's got a ton of money. So kids out there, if you're not good enough to skate, maybe learn how to pour some concrete, clean some carpets, and take the route that Joe Ciaglia took. As always, if you have any feedback for me, you can reach me at mike@thepowellmovement.com or on Twitter. And no one reaches out to me on Twitter, but you can reach me on Twitter at PowellMovement1. Next week on the show, we're going to step into the world of wakeboarding. We have an icon in that sport, Shane Bonifay, and we're going to talk about his career from the early days being overshadowed by his brother Parks to stepping out from Parks' shadow and becoming his own man in the wakeboard world. So that is next Monday on the Powell Movement. I want to thank my sponsors. They are evo.com, diecutstickers.com, Sierra at Tahoe Resort, and Spy Optics. Thanks again for listening and have a great week, everyone.